Many times on the floor of the Senate, we are faced with difficult, sometimes impossible choices. At the end of the day, you wish that you could sit down and write a solution that you believe would achieve its purpose and do it in a responsible manner. Many times we don't get that luxury, and this is an example. Puerto Rico is in a unique relationship with the United States. It has been said that, some have said that this agreement is in the nature of a colonial imposition on the island of Puerto Rico. As the law currently stands, Puerto Rico cannot save itself. It is $70 billion in debt. And those who hold the debt, the bondholders, are demanding payment. The Puerto Rican economy is struggling to survive and struggling to make a basic $2 billion payment on that debt July 1st. Under these emergency circumstances, there is only one place to turn. It is not an imposing colonial power. It is the United States of America that has been in partnership with Puerto Rico and should be in the past and for its future. And we are trying to find a reasonable way through this that will appeal to both political parties. Of course, the political parties see this differently. A Democratic solution to this looks a lot different than a Republican solution. What we have before us is a compromise. It is a measure that was entered into with the cooperation, collaboration, and bargaining between the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, the White House, and Republican leaders. And so it is a mixed bag politically that comes to us today. I support it, though I would be first to tell you there are parts of it that I find absolutely objectionable. Bringing in the notion that they are going to put their economy on a solid footing by reducing the minimum wage is laughable as far as I'm concerned. If you lower that minimum wage to an unconscionable level, more and more people will leave Puerto Rico, which they can legally do and come to the United States, where the minimum wage is significantly larger than that proposed by the Republicans. Same thing true when it comes to overtime pay. I struggle with the powers of this oversight board, but I understand that time and again in history, when entities like New York City and other places are facing virtual bankruptcy, an oversight board has been the vehicle to bring them to stability. I think this oversight board is loaded, even though it's 4-3, loaded on the other side, but I hope that they will in good conscience come up with approaches that are acceptable. Now, what's the alternative if we vote no? And you'll hear a lot of members saying, let's just vote against this and put an end to it. The alternative if we vote no is to give the bondholders, those who are holding the debt of Puerto Rico, all the cards July 1st, all the cards. They can then go to court and force their hand for payment on these debts. And Puerto Rico, which is struggling to provide basic services, will have even more money taken away from them. What is a disastrous situation will become disastrously worse if we vote no and do nothing. This oversight board, for all its flaws, has the power to stop that from happening, has the power to enter into voluntary negotiation on the debt of Puerto Rico, and if they can't reach a voluntary agreement, they have the power to go to court for restructuring on all of the debt that faces that island. Now, that is significant. I hope it doesn't reach that point. I hope there is a voluntary negotiation. But to say that we are going to protest the creation of this board by voting against the creation of the board and this outcome that I've described is to throw this poor island and the people who live there into chaos. I received a telephone call from the Archbishop of Chicago, Blaise Cupich. I respect him very much. And he called me on several issues, but he said, my real purpose for the call is to tell you that the Archbishop of San Juan, Puerto Rico, has reached out to me and told me of the desperate situation which they are facing in Puerto Rico today. 100, maybe even 200 schools have closed. There is no money to buy gasoline for the buses to take the children to schools. Many of the medical services are down to zero. One doctor a day is leaving Puerto Rico, and they can't afford to lose any. Currently, at the major hospital, Centro Medico, there's a serious question as to whether children who are trying to survive cancer will have the drugs that they need for a fighting chance. That's how desperate it is. And he went further to say the air ambulance service on Puerto Rico, which transports the most gravely ill people to medical care, is now not flying. They can't afford to. People have to pay in cash for dialysis services. This is a disastrous situation, and the notion that we can vote no today and not accept the consequences, which will be terrible for Puerto Rico, is not a fair analysis of this problem. Yes, I would have written a different bill. Yes, I would have constructed a different oversight board. But the choice now is not between some ideal or some better approach. Choice is before us, and the choice is yes or no. And a no vote is one that's going to imperil this country and make the poor people living there face even worse hardship. How can that be a good outcome? How can we bargain for the possibility that several months from now there may be a better constructed oversight board? I think the responsible thing to do is to move forward. Don't take my word for it alone. I represent the state of Illinois and proud to do it. My connection with Puerto Rico is through 100,000 Puerto Ricans who live in my state, and I've worked with them, I've met with them. This morning I received a letter from Pedro Perelusi, who is the member of Congress from Puerto Rico. And he goes on to write that as Puerto Rico's sole elected representative, I request you vote in favor of S. 2328. On June 9th, the House approved PROMESA in a strong bipartisan vote, an all too rare event, and I hope we'll replicate it in the Senate this week. He goes on to talk about the imperfections in this bill, which we all know, and he goes on to talk about what the island of Puerto Rico is facing. We've received the same request from the governor of Puerto Rico to ignore these people and to ignore the people who live there and the perils that they face. I don't believe is a responsible course of action. I think we have to move forward in a positive fashion, and that's why I am going to support this measure today and urge my colleagues to do the same. It passed with a strong bipartisan vote in the House, as the resident congressman has related in his letter. It's an indication that as imperfect as this agreement may be, it is the best that we can come up with in this terrible and perilous situation facing the island of Puerto Rico. I urge my colleagues today, vote yes on cloture, vote yes on final passage of this bill. Give Puerto Rico a fighting chance.